If I can stack the deck in my favor with all these little things that might help, like, hey, why not, right?
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Struggle Climbing Show. I'm happy you're here. My name's Ryan. I am the host, and I am a weekend warrior, a fellow weekend warrior, and this is the Weekend Warrior episode of the month. I try to do these about once a month, connect with a real climber, a listener of the show, who's just doing what they can to make it all work. And today's guest, Joey Churchman, is no exception. He's got 3 young kids, I think 3 kids under the age of 7. He's got a full-time job, like a regular 40-hour Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And yet he is finding ways to not just get out and get a little bit of climbing in, but actually level up, to progress as a climber. He is now climbing harder than he ever has in his climbing career, while putting less time into his training and climbing. And we'll get into how he is doing all of that, how he's doing more with less in this episode here, and also how he handles being a super tall climber. That's the other thing. You know, last month we had a Weekend Warrior episode with Gentile, who was 4'11", I think. She was 4 feet 11, small crusher, little crusher, and Joey is 6'6.5". So we are swinging the pendulum the other way, and tall person struggles, just like short person struggles, are still struggles nonetheless. And so Joey shares his perspective on what it's like to be a tall climber, and again, what it's like to have only a few hours a week to put into training. And if you can get super focused and super potent with that training and with that organization like Joey does, you can, as he has, really find ways to take your climbing to new heights. So super inspiring. I really like that. I'm also a weekend warrior. I am a dad. I have jobs. And in fact, if the sound quality of this intro sounds a little bit different than normal, it's because I am recording it in my car as I sit outside of one of those trampoline parks for kids. My daughter's at a friend's birthday party, and it's been a hectic week. And so here I am, holed up in my car while she jumps around on a trampoline. And this serves 2 purposes. One, I won't be tempted to jump on those trampolines where inevitably I would get injured. I just know it. They look way too fun to be safe for an adult. So here I am recording this intro. But 2, it's also very efficient. She's in there having her fun with her friends, and I'm able to get this podcast out on time so that then I can take a little bit of time off next week, or this week by the time you're listening to this, to get out climbing at the Red River Gorge, which is what I am doing. I've got a cabin with some friends, and we're going to get out 3 or maybe even 4 days this week. The weather looks great. I'm really excited about it. And I guess on the tail end of this episode, like after I do this conversation with Joey, I'll tell you a little bit more about my training and climbing. Just recently came out with the October Plog, so if you're interested in like all the nerdy metrics and the hits and the misses of my goals, and how I just recently sent my second only 12D, which was really cool, 12D/13A, although I gave it 12D, and I talk a little bit about that in the Plog. So on the backside here, I'll tell you a little bit about how things are going for me up to this moment, but I don't want to waste any more time. Let's just go ahead and dive in right now with our fellow weekend warrior, Joey Churchman. How old's your daughter?
She's 1. She'll be 2 in December.
Oh, it's good, dude. You're so in it. You're so in it.
Yeah, totally. How old are your kids?
My kids, and my daughter's 7 and my son is 10. We're definitely into like good sleeping. Although my son had a sleepover the other night, and I like heard all this noise at 4 a.m. and I go upstairs and the light's on, and he and his friend are just like laying on the floor like zombies. And I'm like, what the hell, you guys? It's 4 a.m. And my son was like, we're pulling an all-nighter. He was like so psyched about it. And then just felt like garbage for like the next 2 days afterwards. But he did it. He did the thing he wanted to do.
I remember those days.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, 10's a good age. And wait, you have 3 kids, right?
Yeah, I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and then Adria is a 1-year-old. So 2 boys and a girl.
6, 4, and 1. Holy smokes. Yeah, dude, you're fully in it. I love it. You are a true dad warrior right now. You're in full like dad warrior, weekend warrior mode, man. I'm excited to talk about it.
Sounds great. Although you might have to change the branding to once in a while warrior for me instead of weekend warrior.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Weekends are just as busy as the weekdays, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
The sporadic warrior, the less than weekend warrior. You know, for me, and like I'm more of a weekday warrior, to be perfectly honest, because oftentimes the weekends are packed with kids stuff, and sometimes I take them climbing with me, but oftentimes I'm like tomorrow, I'm going to get out. It's a Wednesday tomorrow. I'm just going to hit publish on my episode and turn everything off and just go climb. But yes, weekend warrior in the more nebulous sense, the more it's more of a feeling than a literal definition. But that's good. We can talk about all that as well. And yeah, man, I'm excited to talk. First of all, it was like kind of hard for us to align our schedules, which is just classic, I feel like, for weekend warriors, parents of young kids, professionals and all that. So thanks for taking the time. I know it's an early start for you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm honored to be on and talk to you, man. I love the content. Your stoke is contagious. It's always super fun to listen in.
Oh, thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. Yeah, the stoke is pretty high right now. And just like it gets like more and more, I get more and more stoked every time I connect with somebody like yourself. I love this series that I'm doing because I'm just talking to real climbers who are getting after it and making it work in the little time they have. So yeah, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And thank you for joining the show. I took a look at the form that you filled out and like immediately responded to it because it was just, I just like saw a lot of myself in it, you know, maybe me like a few years ago because you've got young kids, but also like you're really finding creative ways to get after it. And it looks like you found a lot of very impactful training modalities and interventions and essentially ways to hack your schedule to make it work and still be a performance climber while being insanely busy. And so let's get to know you for a second here before we dive into all the nerdy climbing stuff. Who are you? Age, where you're at, how long you've been climbing? Hit me with a rundown here.
Yeah, Joseph Churchman, commonly go by Joey. I'm 39. I've been climbing since 2011, so 14 years. And I currently live in Bend, Oregon. I've been here for about 10 years now. But I got started climbing in San Diego in 2011. So it was kind of cool to listen to the previous Weekend Warrior Gentile's podcast. We actually climbed at the same gym. I don't think it was overlapping because I had moved away, but cool to hear about Mesa Rim. Like I have a bunch of friends that still climb down there.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think one of the great opportunities for this Weekend Warrior stacking up where it is here, and it's funny that you mentioned Gentile because that was on my mind as well, since the theme for her was she was a shorty crusher, and then I was taking a look at your stats this morning, and you are a tall crusher, man. What's your height?
Yeah, Gentile, that was a great episode. She's a total crusher. Hats off to her. But yeah, I am on the other end of the spectrum. So I'm 6'6.5".
Yeah, that is the other end of the spectrum because she's 4'11". So 4'11 to 6'6.5". We're swinging into the edges of the bell curve here on the Weekend Warrior series, which I think is really good because Gentile brought some really unique perspectives, I think, on what it's like to be a shorter climber. And she climbs with a lot of taller climbers. Her partner's over 6 foot. But you're even taller. So 6'6.5" is definitely an outlier. And no doubt we will peel into that. I guess let's get a little bit more of the kind of basic information here, overview information, and then we will peel back on that. So started climbing in the gym, been climbing for 14 years. You're now in Bend. So I was out there not too long ago, home to Smith Rock, which is awesome. How often are you able to get outside?
That's a bit of a struggle with the kids and you know, the work and everything. But I'd say I probably try to get out on a rope. Like it probably works out to be a dozen-ish times a year. So maybe like 10 to 15 times on a rope. And then it is kind of balanced with, I do get out and around town in Boulder. So that's probably about maybe let's call it a dozen times. So somewhere around 30 days, I think, a year, I probably get outside.
And then other than that, you're training at your house or at a local gym?
Yeah, a local gym, Boardworks, climbing here in Bend.
You climb on rope and boulder. Would you consider yourself one or the other?
I mean, I think my heart is in rope climbing right now, really in sport climbing. It's super fun. Although I do love all disciplines. You know, I do enjoy getting on the boulders and, you know, I do also love those big alpine like trad days as well. But yeah, right now my focus is on sport climbing, I'd say, and kind of bouldering is a really efficient way to get outside as a parent.
No doubt. Yeah, it's a little bit easier than going out for like a long day of sport climbing or multi-pitch climbing. And then what about grades? Hit us with your grades, bouldering and route climbing grades that you're proud of.
Yeah, so I've bouldered V7 outside and 512A at Smith on a
Nice.
rope.
Ooh, 12A at Smith is nails hard. For those who haven't been to Smith, I was out there not too long ago and was fully epicing on like mid 11s. So it is a style and it is an old school. I got to spend the day with Alan Watts and oh my gosh, dude, I got on chain reaction and I was like, is this 13C instead of 12C? But I think it's a Smith style thing, but that's really impressive. So V7 and 512 outside, and you're juggling 3 kids as we've already covered, which you already have your hands full, but do you also have a job as well?
I do, yeah. I'm a analytical chemist, so I'm working Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week.
So the traditional, 9 to 5, if you will, Monday through Friday?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Okay. That is weekend warrior in every sense of the word, although, as you said, maybe less than weekend warrior, a sporadic weekend warrior. But you're really getting after it, Joey. And so this is going to be exciting territory for us to dive in here. And we covered kind of this first outlier element of yours, which is your height. So 6'6.5". And as I was reading our exchange here, you talked about how some people can be quick to say, oh, you're tall, you've got all these advantages, you can reach through things. But as we've established in the prior conversation with Gentile, there are advantages and disadvantages to being an outlier in terms of height or weight, especially when routes are oftentimes being put up by people who are a little bit more within a standard deviation of the bell curve. So what's the experience like being 6'6.5"?
I'd say, yeah, that's what comes to mind first is I think early on and when I started climbing, I feel like sometimes there was feedback of like, oh, wow, like you can reach past that move, or, there's like this aspect of like, oh, wow, you're cheating, which I guess early on, I admit I had some self-confidence issues with my height or I was definitely very aware of it. And early on when I started climbing, it definitely generated a little bit of like negative self-talk. If I'm being completely honest, like, oh, wow, like, do I belong in this sport? Am I not like the right body type for this sport sort of thing? And now it's just kind of funny, fast forward to now where I'm a lot more comfortable, obviously, in it. And, it's like, well, it's just funny because it's like, well, we're all trying to cheat the system, right? Like, that's the whole point of like, finding all this beta that is like, what's the most efficient way to move up the rock or plastic? It's like, we're all trying to cheat the system and find the best move. So it's, all I have is my experiences as a tall person, right? And I will say like, I am not the Lorax, so I do not speak for the trees, but
you've got some young kids when you're quoting like Dr. Seuss, like straight off the bat. I love it.
Yeah, totally. But now it's like, I'm, much more comfortable in my, in my body climbing, and all we know is our own experience with our bodies. I can't say what it would be like to be shorter, but generally speaking, I think, it all depends on the movement and the rock type and everyone's morphology, right? There's like an infinite combinations of those things between, your finger size to your height to your strength to power weight ratio. Like all these things are so complex and then you add on to the movement type of each individual boulder or route or whatever. But I think I will say that like vert tech stuff as a tall climber, if I can accomplish things in less moves, right, it's pretty likely that it's going to be easier for me, right? Like I was working a route with my buddy Jason, and at the top crux, I can basically like it's just less moves for me, right? I can use a lower foot, and so it's instead of 3 moves, it's 5 moves for him. So generally speaking, I think like on that type of terrain, right, it's probably easier for me. And I think generally where I struggle as a taller climber is sit starts where I have like, I'm starting with like, my knees in my ear sort of thing, right? Like,
right.
And, steep stuff is probably also a bit challenging for me, although I've been working on it quite a bit with the board climbing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate the overview. I think we'll continue to explore a little bit more about the tall guy experience as we go through here. I do want to talk about the board climbing. You mentioned being a member of the Boardworks there. Prior to that, I mean, just kind of let's do like a quick little Cliff's Notes of your training, and have you been coached, or how have you trained over the years, and how's that evolved to, where we are today?
So I think there was like a light bulb moment a few years ago after having my first son, where it was kind of just like I kind of felt like a fire lit under me, like, hey, I'm not getting any younger, and I have this incredible opportunity to live close to Smith, and all these routes there were so like had just always been so inspiring. Like walking by, and it's like, oh man, maybe one day I could that would be the dream, right? Get on one of those routes and just be able to get up it, not even maybe send it, just experience what it would be like to be in that position on that historic route. And yeah, it was kind of like a light bulb went off, or where this fire got kind of lit underneath me. And that was, that was probably 2022. And I ended up signing up for a Lattice program. And yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not affiliated with anybody or Lattice or anything, but yeah, I signed up for the Lattice program, and that would have been like the winter, probably like October, November, December or something of 2022. And so I did that. It was like a 12-week program, and that was great. Honestly, as a parent and full-time worker, like having a program laid out for me where I could just walk into the gym and like pull up the app and execute. I don't have to think, right? It's just like, as a parent, there's like decision atrophy all day, and as a full-time employee, same thing, right? And so being able to go to the gym and just be like, okay, what am I doing today? Oh, it's 4x4s, or I have to do this stretching or this or that. It's just like, okay, execute, like get it done and leave. And then,
So prior to that, before you had signed up for that Lattice program, what were you doing?
I was just bouldering at a commercial set gym, and it was just more like social climbing. We'd get in, like I'd get in for like an hour and a half and boulder probably twice a week at a commercial gym, and that was really it. I really don't think I wouldn't call anything training before that. It was more just like social fun climbing, and of course like trying hard, but yeah, just more kind of not really formatted for that.
This episode is supported by Petzl, and y'all, I've been using Petzl gear for more than a decade now. I love all that they make. And so what I want to talk about right now are harnesses. And I've got a handful of different types of Petzl harnesses, depending on the objective that I'm tucking into. So for sport climbing, they make pretty minimalist and pretty light harnesses. I'm talking about the Sama, the Selena, the Hirundos, and the Sita. These are very light harnesses and pretty minimalist with regard to like the padding and the straps and adjustability and the gear loops. And that's fine, because when you're sport climbing, like I've been doing a lot of at the Red, you're just hanging a handful of draws from them. And so I like to have a light minimalist harness because I don't really want to feel it while I'm using it. But when you're out there doing longer days, when you're doing multi-pitch days, you're doing trad climbing, like I was doing out in Squamish not too long ago, you're going to be sitting in your harness for a lot longer, and also you're going to be carrying a lot more gear. And that's when you're going to want an adjustable harness that can rack a ton of gear and get you through that day. Talking about the Ajama, the Luna, and the Aquila, these are all great for your longer, more epic days. So if you're a climber that likes to sample a bunch of different things, I recommend having at least two harnesses. One that's very light for sport climbing and easy to move around in, and one that's going to be a little bit more burly and more comfortable for a longer day out on rock. You can learn about all of those over at petzl.com. That link is right down there in your show notes. All right, y'all, I just want to take a quick second here to talk about my shoe game. And I've been learning a lot about shoes and their effectiveness and importance over the last few years as I've gotten serious about climbing. And so I just want to tell you about my favorite shoes and how I'm using them. So right now I'm doing a lot of climbing on my kilter board inside, and hands down, my favorite shoes for board climbing are the Furia Airs. They're very soft, like a slipper, but they've got like a nice little aggressive toe on them to toe into those holds on steeper climbs. I love them so, so much. The only thing they maybe don't do great is heel hook, but I don't do many heel hooks on the board. Other than that, they are just the best. And they're also great on set problems in the gym because you can smear on volumes, but you can also toe in on smaller holds. So I love the Furia Airs for that. And then outside, no contest, are the Instincts. The Instinct VSRs are my favorite. They're the blue ones. They're a little bit softer on the rubber than the regular Instinct VSs. And man, I just love them both. I climb in them both. You'll see videos of me wearing the blue ones and wearing the orange ones. And also the VSR LVs, the low volume ones that Nathaniel Coleman helped to design. Those are the ones that I wore when I sent that 12D bouldery problem outside on a rope called Maisie May. So those are my favorite shoes right now. And by the way, if you're in the US and you order a pair of shoes from Scarpa, if you use code STRUGGLE at checkout, you'll get a free Struggle Scarpa hat. It's like a secret little Easter egg gift in there. And if you order from anywhere else, you can still use the code, and it just helps them to know that you heard about Scarpa on this show. Good luck on your prodigies. So that coincided with this, as you said, you had your son. There's this fire that was lit where you're like, I want to get serious, more serious about climbing. And you had some goals, some objectives, things that you wanted to climb. So you signed up for the Lattice program. And I experienced that too, actually. It was quite a similar boat. I had always just kind of climbed for fun, was climbing outside a lot, going to the gym with friends, and didn't think a lot about training. And then I got psyched and really wanted to move up and progress through some harder routes and grades out at the Red River Gorge. And I signed up for a Lattice plan. So very, very directly similar. And very similarly, I just responded well to the app. I just liked having like these color-coded boxes that I could check off each day, is like the gamification of it and all that. But the outcome, of course, is a product of what you put into it. So you said it was a 12-week program. What was that experience like for you? And when you came out of that 12 weeks, where were you as a climber?
It was really interesting because it definitely forayed into some things where I didn't really focus on, like mobility and stretching, for instance. Like I was pretty consistently doing yoga up until having kids, probably like for 5 years. And that was always like, that always felt great. And so getting back into this kind of mobility and body care type of quote unquote training, I guess, was really nice. And that was an aspect that I kind of undervalued, a lot of the mobility work. It got me a little bit uncomfortable, but in a good way, because part of that training led me to board climbing. It was like the last block of that training was like, okay, now like let's start doing some board climbing. And it was because of that I went and gravitated towards this newer gym in town at the time. It had just opened, and so, which is all board climbing. And so that was something that was, like I said, a little bit uncomfortable, but in a good way.
Had you been doing any board climbing or much board climbing prior to that?
No, I mean, it's funny because years before that, there was like a moon board in one of the gyms, and I remember like trying to pull on, and I literally could not pull on. And I was like, how is this B4? You know, like classic moon board.
Yeah, been there. I think like I can relate. I'm sure many people listening right now can relate. That thing, 40 degrees on those holds, you're like, what? Okay,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's obviously it's maybe the toughest board that one could like have as their entree into board climbing, but
Totally.
essentially it sounds like you were using the set problems and all of that until this Lattice program forced you in a sense, or encouraged you to get on some boards. So what boards were you climbing on, and what did that look like?
Joined Forwardworks Climbing, and awesome gym, by the way. It's really great community and really great people there, and encourage anyone to swing by if they're coming into town. But yeah, the boards they have there, they have 2 kilter, and they're fully adjustable too. So they go
Nice.
from like vert to 60 degrees overhung. And so they have kilter, they have a tension board too, they have a moon board and a spray wall and a decoy. So I started, I mean, like getting into the board climbing, I always thought that there was this, probably because of trying to pull onto the moon board, but I was just like, oh wow, like only crushers board climb. Like I'm not a crusher, like this is going to be so hard. And that's the beauty of the adjustable boards as well, and other boards, right? There's like, actually board climbing is like for everybody. Like you can be brand new to climbing and be able to board climb, depending on the angle and the board type, right? I mean,
Right.
and so kilter was a pretty, so I started on the kilter board, and I just remember just struggling on everything, but I stuck with it, and I really started to enjoy it for so many reasons. Yeah, and so that was the very end of that training block, was starting to train on the board, and that really sucked me into board climbing.
Let's kind of peel back on that a little bit more if we could, because as somebody who was fairly new to that, you weren't new to climbing, and you had been climbing quite a bit and training quite a bit, but how did your body respond to that steeper, punchier style of climbing? And what did those workouts look like? How often a week? How long were your sessions? And then we can maybe compare that to now that you've been a little bit more seasoned as a board climber, how that looks.
I think they were just, I'm trying to remember back, but I think it was more or less like basically like trying to do like 60-minute sessions on a board and more or less projecting. And I remember it was like kilter, I think at 40 degrees, and, V3 was hard, very hard for me. And I remember there was like this V4 that was like my mini proj for a while there at the beginning. And it was like, I think it was called like Starfish or something. But I just remember being so stoked to finally get it. Cause I think there was somebody else who I was like working with and they were on it. I'm like, oh, that looks so sick. And so it was like this very slow, like build up over time. And, now it's been such a fun journey being able to like work through the grades on like the kilter, for example, and also being able to switch around and try different boards, because I feel like different boards definitely offer different things. And so the cool thing is like coming back around and now I'm back on the moon board where I feel like I started and just couldn't even pull on. And now it's like, okay, cool. Like it's really actually quite enjoyable. And it's like a very, very satisfying feeling to like top out on anything on the moon board now.
I like that you mix it up, because I agree that different boards offer there's some big dynamic type jumpy moves on some boards, and there's crimpier, harder lock off type moves. And that's predominantly your training now, right? So you go to BoardWorks, 2-3 days a week? And how long are those sessions? And when do you fit them in with a 40-hour-a-week job and 3 young kids?
Yeah, good question. Well, the beauty, one of the best factors about BoardWorks is it's 24/7. And so
nice.
Yeah, my buddy Dan got me on this program. And so it's like kind of like informally we started getting called like the dad squad. And so we put the kids to bed and help out around the house. So then it's like, it's like 8:15, 8:30 by then. And it's like a perfect time to go because the kids are asleep. Your partner, spouse is chilling, right? And then it's just like, okay, I have my time. And so we show up, and it's funny because there's like the college kids, and then these old dads show up at like 8:30, and like everyone else is getting ready to leave. Yeah. But yeah, it's predominantly twice a week I'll go in, and I try to limit my sessions to about an hour on the board. I just think it's I have my warm up dialed now, and that takes about 20 minutes or so. But then I usually try to limit my time on the board regardless of like what my intent is, whether it's like trying to do power endurance or 4x4s or just fun projecting. I try to limit to about an hour. And so if I'm in at 8:30, like generally climbing like on the wall at 9, and I try to like limit it to 10. But of course there's times where I'm trying till 10:30 or something. But
you get psyched.
That's kind of what it looks like now. Yeah.
So that's I mean, it's a super efficient way to train, especially for somebody as busy as you are, but really for anybody. It's what I've been doing a lot of lately, these last few months here, since I've put the kilter in the basement, which makes it doubly easy because I don't even have to commute. But essentially a couple days a week for somewhere around an hour or 90 minutes. Other than that, beyond that, you're just kind of powered down, or that's what I've felt. And like you get in, you get out, it does the job. On the power and the strength side, are you also finding ways to build route fitness and endurance when you're on the board, or is that a different workout?
There was a period of time where I would tip it to vertical and just kind of traverse. I really like the decoy board for that, where I would just try and stay on at like vert or 5 degrees or something and stay on for like 20 minutes, right? And then also you can switch up one of your days to like a volume day and do like things like EMOM, like every minute on the minute, or like the 4x4s if you're trying to do power endurance. But lately I just haven't been as psyched to do that kind of stuff. I've actually been, my commute to work is like 15 minutes. So I've actually been trying to do like the Car King thing.
Let's go.
Talk about like efficiency, right? Like I'm going to use that time anyways to drive to work. And so I'm trying it out and it doesn't seem to be hurting. I'll say that. Well, basically, like, I don't know if everyone knows, but it's like, I was actually talking about this last night with some of the guys, but it's like arcing in your car. And so I have a little squeezy. And so I like just do like a low intensity, like squeeze grip trainer for like 15 minutes. And then on the way home, I switched up to the other arm. And honestly, that seems to be like I'm not doing any testing or anything, but it seems to be working. And then I feel like when I do get outside, if I have a project that I'm psyched on, hopefully I can get out enough to where like I can kind of build that like fitness from the route climbing itself a little bit too.
Yeah, and I'll say to the carking, because I've had conversations on this podcast about it with Ollie Tor from Lattice, where I think it was a fellow coach at Lattice who kind of coined that carking term. So it's arcing, but in the car. And I really took to it because my daughter goes to school downtown, and it's about a 25-minute drive each way. And so I'll do one arm on the way down and one arm on the way back. And I did a test, and I think I've talked about this on a blog, but I'm putting a video together for it. So there's just an aside for those who are curious about this. But I did a test where I tested my capacity on both individual arms, and then I only did the arcing with one arm. And then I did a test afterwards, and this is a N=1 test, y'all, but I did it as scientifically possible as I could, keeping all other factors the same. And the arm that I did the carking with improved in its capacity in the endurance test that I did by 13%, which is not nothing. I mean, it's double-digit percents. Yeah. So, I mean, the science behind it, and Eric Hurst has talked about this as well on the show, as have Dr. Tyler Nelson and others. It's essentially like a low-level pump that you put on the arm, very low level pump, but that increased blood flow in the forearms increases like the mitochondrial efficiency and the capillarity. And so these are big words that I have very little grasp on, but I trust the pros on this, which is essentially it's that kind of continuous low level pump that helps to build a little bit more capacity over time. It takes quite a bit of time to do it. It's like a slow adaptation. And you can also do it on the wall. You could do vertical, like you were doing when you set the board to vertical and you're on jugs and you just climb around in circles for 20 minutes and it works both arms at the same time. And you put that very, very low level pump on. And over time doing that, if you could do that a few days a week or every day, then great. But I don't want to spend 20 minutes on the wall when I could be like climbing harder. And so it does make sense to just like sit and do it while on a conference call or while walking the kids or the dog. Anyway, I digress. I love carking. So good for you. Way to find some efficiency in your 15-minute commute.
Yeah, heck yeah. I'm glad it's working for you. And like you had good results. Like that's super encouraging.
It doesn't hurt because it's not high intensity and it's not high volume. So it's just one of those things where it just kind of feels good. It feels good on the fingers. And at least in my case, I found that it worked well. And there have been some other studies about the efficacy of that kind of training. So very good. Right. So a couple days at the gym with the dad squad, a little bit in the car, finding some efficiencies there. I'm curious what else you learned from that initial training block that you did with Lattice that you've carried over, or maybe you haven't carried over with regard to, could be weight training or route fitness or off the wall training, hangboard type stuff. Is there anything else that you're doing right now in addition to just the couple days at the gym?
I guess to answer that, I'll say I ended up going back to Lattice and doing a second round that kind of built onto my first. And that was informative too, because I feel like I found my limit. And I feel like for that round, I mean, it was still great, but I feel like it was just too much for me at that time in life, especially where I can't recall all the details, but it ended up being like 2 hangboard sessions a week, along with, 2 gym and like 1 outside, and then along with like weights and mobility. And so that was a really good experience to understand, like, okay, this was too much for me, again, for me at the time. It wasn't like it was a bad thing, but I didn't get injured or anything, but just, I couldn't handle it, like, in terms of, just life, like workload and everything. And
yeah, you would have had to have, like, put the kids down and done something every single night, which I'm sure your partner would have been, like, super psyched on. So, like, it wasn't really like a training load situation. It was just like a schedule situation, it sounds like.
Right. And I was already like on the floor some of the days, like stretching out with the kids. Like,
right.
Yeah. So that was good. So that ended up, what I learned is, simple is kind of beautiful in a lot of ways. And so I really simplified after that second round. So now what I found really works for me is the 2 gym sessions a week, which is generally like Monday, Thursday. And then I started incorporating like a cardio day, which I was not a runner at all. I actually just totally despised running. And I had this yeah, we had this objective, and I wanted to be fit for it. There's a lot of hiking, and so we started running, and actually like started to really enjoy it after a few weeks. It took some time, but started really enjoying it. And so I keep that.
This is where our
Because
parallels like sharply diverge. This is you and I were like we were so on a level, Joey, and now we've
oh
taken
man,
a left and a right
well,
turn. But
have you been running?
I enjoy the idea of running more than enjoy the reality of the running.
That's
but
how I was. I will say, like, I was 100%, like anti-running before, and it's like I was joking around, like the only time I'm ever gonna run is if I need to, right? And then
Right.
it was painful. Like it was like I was just dying on every run, and then like all of a sudden, like a few weeks in, I started thriving. I'm like, oh, I can like maintain this, and then like the endorphins are great. And so I do feel like, again, it's kind of like the karting idea where it's like, well, I don't know if it's gonna help necessarily, but it's like probably not gonna hurt. And so if I can stack the deck in my favor with all these little things that might help, like, hey, why not, right? And I do see that fitness realized like on the hike in, or I'm not like huffing and puffing going up a gully or something steep. And so if I feel like if I'm fresher when I get to the climb, then maybe it's better. But
it's good for overall health.
just
Like
good,
like cardiovascular health is just
totally.
climbing aside. It's very very good for you. So if you
And
enjoy
especially
it,
like as the
and
kids get older, like trying to keep up with them, right? Once we start going on these bike rides and stuff, it's like, well, I gotta have some fitness to keep up with these guys.
yeah, right on. Cool. So you've been able to work that in. How many days a week do you run, and how far are you running? What's the pace like? What's the experience?
So that's like on my Tuesdays, generally speaking. I don't know, 20 to 30 minutes. Nothing too crazy.
Do you do that in the morning?
I tend to do that around lunchtime. So able to get out and just, yeah,
Cool.
try and get in like a short run on Tuesdays. And then I also try to incorporate one strength conditioning day a week. I feel like that's really great. Just again, like for general health and, feeling kind of robust as a person, as a parent too, like scooping kids off the floor, all that good stuff. And so for that, I keep it pretty simple. I just do bench, deadlift, squat, and shoulder press. And I feel like those four exercises really, for me, make me feel just a little bit more like, robust on the wall, and just feel good overall.
Yeah, super efficient. I mean, as a theme of this conversation, just out of necessity for being somebody who works a full-time job plus has 3 kids under the age of 7, that's the necessity. But also, it requires you to zero in on these training interventions that have an outsized impact on performance, and that's what you've been finding. And so you can have these punchy workouts that really pay off when you go on the wall. And you alluded to that when you said you started running for an objective. Can you tell us a little bit about whether it's that objective or some of these other goals that you've had outside that you've recently achieved? It wasn't too long ago that you punched into 512 at Smith Rock, which is pretty rare and very challenging grade. Certainly based on my experience, I had just done 13A when I went out to Smith, and it was very humbling being out there. So I'd love to hear how this training is translating over to Rock.
I think I first saw it in some of the bouldering that we did outside just around town about a year ago. But, well, yeah, I guess I saw it on the routes too. But it definitely takes, for me, just not getting outside as much as I'd like to, or as much as would be ideal. There was a bit of like an application period, I guess, if you could call it, where it's like, okay, like I'm definitely getting a lot stronger inside. And, I've been climbing outside. I have years of experience outside. So just like applying that to outside, right? Kind of like just getting comfortable again with the rock and having good tactics outside and trying to be efficient, not over gripping, right? Like getting used to the exposure again. What I first realized is like getting on some of these harder routes for me, like, the first go on routes, like I was able to go like, more or less like bolt to bolt, and there wasn't like any like stopper moves, right? Like I might not have the fitness to climb the route right then and there, but it was like, oh, okay, like I can do these moves. Like, there wasn't anything that was like shutting me down, and that was super encouraging, right? Like I feel like years ago, there was always times where I'd get to halfway up the route and just be like, oh wow, this is like total stopper. Like I can't pull these moves. And so that was probably the first sense I had of like, okay, like, yeah, like I'm getting stronger, and I can like put this thing down if I just start to like make links and feel more comfortable and get in the flow.
Sick.
Yeah. And I think also too, what really helped was for my first, like 12 breaking into that grade, I picked a route that was short and bouldery. And so like the route,
What's the route?
that was called Torrid Zone at Smith. And that's on the north point. So that's like a shorter basalt cliff there, like totally killer rock, but just kind of a shorter route overall where, I can't even remember, like whatever, like 40 feet or something. Right. And it's just like kind of a slabby section turns into like a 3-bolt, like boulder problem basically. And that was a great like first route, right. To like apply that bouldering strength that I had gotten in the gym and outside and just like get on a route. And so it was like, it made it like simpler. And that route also, I will admit too, like being taller for that route, I think made it easier for me because that route was like kind of like generally the boulder section was like big moves, but generally like pretty good holds. And so I think that really came together beautifully for me in terms of like breaking into the grade, like something that was obtainable and yeah, very applicable to like what I was doing in the gym.
Tactically speaking, it's just super smart. And when we're trying to break into a new grade, or we're trying to do something very hard, we want to play to our strengths and also to our lifestyle. So a shorter route that's punchier was matching the training that you were doing, but also you could probably get more rips in on it than if it was a 100-foot route. It's just easier to get out to and try to do. And then if you're also able to use your height to your advantage in the crux areas, then yeah, more power to you. So you picked a great one there. How long did it take you to project that and then ultimately get the send?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think I sent that on my second day of red pointing. So I was like, yeah, I was just so stoked. So like day one, I think was just like sussing the route out. And then day two was like actual red point go. So like my third day working it.
Amazing, man. Well, yeah. What does that tell you? Probably not near the limit then.
It's cool because it's nice to be able to, because I don't get as many days outside to be able to like, hey, find these, perfect projects, if you will, where it's like, okay, if I am able to put a few days into it and then hopefully send. So it's really nice to kind of find that grade for me right now.
Yeah, for sure. Like if as you were saying, you get 12 days out on a rope in a year, you don't want every single one of those days to be out at the same project. Probably you want to get out and support friends elsewhere, but also just get a variety and have fun. Well, let's contrast that with the next 512 that you did. Was that Heinous Cling?
Yeah, the lower portion of Heinous Cling.
Yeah, can you describe the route? I walked past it, I think. Could you describe the route for the listeners who haven't been over to it? And then let's talk through your process on that.
Yeah, totally. That's a very popular like first 12 I think as well, and just an absolute gorgeous route. It's pretty vert. Or it's definitely like vert technical climbing. So a little bit different than like Torrid Zone, which was overhung steep and a little bit shorter. Heinous Cling is a bit longer, 60 or so feet. And the climbing is kind of just like continuous. Like I kind of called it like more or less like a continuous like V2 where, while it didn't feel like there's like, or maybe V3, whatever, but like it's kind of like a continuous like accumulation of these moves, and there's not a ton of like rests, but yeah, I got on that. So fast forward to this past June, got on that for the first time, and like I said, it was really encouraging just to be able to go kind of bolt to bolt up the route like pretty much the first day. And the bolting on that is really, I guess, rewarding as well, because the common cold crux of the route is after, I think is it the fourth bolt? But there's a bolt right at your face, and then you go into this crux sequence with like crimps, and at the very end of the crux sequence, you hit this rail, which is quite good, but the bolt is like well below your feet. So if you were to pitch off there, it's a pretty good size fall. But then you have to mantle up on the rail before you can clip your next bolt. So it's definitely got some mental spice to it.
How long did you project that one?
It was pretty similar to the Torrid Zone where, let's see, I got on it the first day, and then I think I red pointed it on my third day. And so getting out the second day, it was like a really like beta intensive working it on top rope. And then what really helped for that one is like I got on top rope, I put the rope up, and then I was having trouble through the crux sequence finding my feet, and I just basically lowered and did that crux sequence like 4 times in a row on top rope to just like really nail it in. So that when it came time for the red plane burn, it was just kind of like I was just flowing and wasn't thinking anymore.
All right, y'all, just want to take a quick second here to tell you how I'm staying healthy and taking care of myself as I'm now pushing my body to the hardest limits I've ever pushed it as a rock climber. And the way that I'm fueling these gains that I'm working so hard to get is with PhysiVantage Nutrition. Y'all know PhysiVantage. They've been a sponsor of the show since the very first episode, and I've been a paying customer of PhysiVantage since long before there was ever a podcast. And why is that, Ryan? Why am I buying PhysiVantage products? Well, it's because they work. They're designed by climbers for climbers to help us climb our best. Every single day, I'm taking their supercharged collagen before I do like a little light fingerboard workout, like the Abrahangs that I've talked about here on this show, or before I go climbing or go to the gym. And I'm also fueling up either before or after a workout with one of their protein powders. It's like my sweet treat that I have. And the most important thing, as I mentioned, is that it works. Most coaches and doctors and dietitians are going to tell you that you should probably take in about 1 gram of protein per body weight every single day if you're an athlete and you're trying to fuel your gains. So for me, 155 grams of protein is a lot of protein in a day. And I love a whole foods diet, but I have to supplement in order to hit that goal. And I do it by using PhysiVantage. Hit that link right there in your show notes and you'll get 15% off pretty much everything over at the PhysiVantage store, or use code STRUGGLE15 at checkout to get that discount, and let's get after it. This episode is supported by Rungni. Y'all know Rungni. It's Magnus Mitbo's company. Oh my gosh, they make incredible stuff, you guys, okay? Chalk, apparel, accessories, chalk bags, chalk buckets. It's all there over on their website. What are my favorites? Okay, well, right now, I'm using their liquid chalk every time I go out and have a session. It's called Mag Juice, first of all. So boom, you've already got my money. But then, it works really, really well. I rub it on my palms, my fingers, and it's like my base layer. I don't then have to chalk up as much when I'm climbing, whether it's a gym session or out at the crag. Less time chalking up means more time actually climbing and hopefully landing moves and not punting off my project. And then the apparel's fantastic. My absolute favorite, I think you guys know this, are their harness pants. They are stretchy, they are durable, they are attractive. I love the cut, I love the feel. They are the best dang pants in the game. And right now, you can get 10% off pretty much everything over at Rungni by using code STRUGGLE. I'd like to talk about the mental side for a second, because you don't get a ton of days out on a rope. And I've been to Smith, and I haven't been on the routes that we just talked about there, but I've been on some other routes, and the bolting is pretty old school there. And, you know, when you're drilling holes by hand and bolts cost money, as I had a conversation with Alan Watts about it, they tend to be, you know, a little spacey, a little generously run out. And it's vert, so unlike where I predominantly climb at the red, where you kind of fall into space, there's this, you know, fear of spiking hard and hurting your feet or your ankles, or just, you know, slamming into something. And so it's a little heady out there. Now, it may not be heady for those who climb at Smith all the time, but when you only get out maybe couple times a month in the good season, or maybe there's a few months where you don't get out at all because of work and weather and family, how are you handling any fears that come into play when you're on the sharp end?
That's a good question. Totally fair question. I think what first comes to mind is because I don't get that many days out, when I do get that opportunity, I am just like so psyched and so like chomping at the bit. And it's like, okay, like I gotta capitalize on this opportunity, you know? Before, I think, you know, before kids, it's like, okay, let's go climbing. I kind of want to get on this route, right? And then maybe you go and someone else is on the route, and it's like, okay, well, we can audible, right? Like, you know, I can save that for next week or next weekend, right? It's just like, for me at least, it was like pretty opportunistic, like, oh, let's see what happens sort of thing. But now I feel like, you know, I have an opportunity, I have a date to get outside, I have some sort of goal or goal route I want to get on, and it's just like, okay, that's the plan, right? And so when I get that opportunity, I feel like I just really want to capitalize on it.
Yeah, the psyche can overcome some of the fear, especially if you've managed to make the stars align to clear the day in the schedule. You also mentioned on Heinous Cling there that tactic of using top roping to dial in the crux moves. And I think that's great. I think I have more of a tendency to try to lead most of the things that I do. And I think it can be wasteful in time. And when I'm really projecting, I'm clipping up on bolts and I'm working sections on top rope. And how often are you utilizing that tactic when you're getting outside on routes?
If it's a route I really want to red point, I think that's the ideal scenario for me, where I'll put the rope up, go bolt to bolt, like on the first lead, and then get on top rope. And then hopefully it's just like I lower on top rope, and I will just like work every section or work it from the ground up on top rope. And basically like it's just this whole total like beta burn and beta day, like collecting as much beta as I can, and then like taking that and trying to remember it, which I feel like is a skill in of itself. And
yeah,
I really try to like take that and remember it, and then, you know, do visualization before bed or when I'm brushing my teeth. Like I think about those sequences in my head. And I think that's something that like I heard from a podcast with like Jesse Firestone, which I think is very powerful to visualize the moves. And then like I think what he said, like, you know, it's free, right? Like you can do that anytime you want, and like go through the route in your head and like think about what it's like to be at that bolt and be above that bolt, and just like, you know, get comfortable in your head. And then I feel like it doesn't, again, it's one of those things of like, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. Why not try it, right? Like try and stack the deck in your favor of like visualizing those moves and going through it. And so, yeah, I think that's my approach is get the top rope up, but then really just try and dial in all that beta as much as I can and remove that potential fear of falling high above a bolt or not being able to clip your next bolt or whatnot.
Yeah, I think it was Jesse, I recall him talking with me about that kind of the visualization, and it's free, like why not do it? And it's one of the joys I get out of climbing is I do some great climbing when my head's on the pillow at night, and I'm running through those moves. I don't need to count sheep, I just count moves, and I'm always crushing, which I love. But also, I recall having a conversation with Eric Hurst and also Ali Tor from Lattice, who both cited studies that showed that like true deep visualization of moves and using specific muscles actually had like a physiological component. Like it kept the neurological connections stronger there so that you could recruit more muscles. It was totally wild. Like it's not just a mental game, but it also then flows into the physical side, like the physiology of the body when you do that real, you know, true and deliberate visualization. So yeah, very cool. And another great thing for us busy climbers, for busy parents or people who just have a crazy schedule, is you can be visualizing even if you can't get out on the route. I'm curious what the translation to rock is. As you said, sometimes it takes a minute because it sounds like the bulk of your training is on fairly steep boards now. So 40 degrees, if you're talking about kind of the standard moonboard angle, but you can take the kilter to 60 or 70 degrees at Boardworks because it adjusts that steep. So you can be doing roof problems, all of which, for the most part, is going to be quite steeper than when you get out to Smith Rock and you get on a rope. What have you learned on the technique side and also as a taller climber that's worked for you when you're climbing that more technical, vertical, thinner, crimpier climbing?
This past year, I kind of tried to break down the outdoor like rope climbing into like little mini seasons. And so like more or less like spring, summer, fall. And I noticed that, so during the summer, I was getting out really early, kind of like dawn patrol, which you can totally climb at Smith, but it's a really short window because obviously it gets really quite hot there, like 90s, like could even hit triple digits. But generally, right, if you're able to get out really early, like the overnight lows can be like in the mid 50s, which, you know, for a few hours, that's like totally reasonable, especially if it's in the shade. And I feel like what I found too was just kind of having a couple like sessions of like building and just getting on easier stuff and getting your flow and you know, like the first day was just getting out on like, you know, 5.9 and 5.10 and then slowly building, you know, okay, now like the next session, like I'm going to try and on-site this 5.11 and trying to get some little, momentum, right? And like little victories here and there. And then it's like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good. I've kind of stacked a few sessions of success. And then it's like, okay, time to like move on to the project. And I feel like that was one of the first, again, like my mini session or my mini season was like one of the first times where I felt like kind of like a momentum. in my climbing outdoors. And that felt pretty like powerful to like stack up a couple little like victories, right? Like start small where you know you can have some success and like just get used to the style and getting onto your feet and like climbing like, okay, I'm gonna climb this 5'9" like as efficiently as I can, right? And just and feel really good about it. And then carry that into like the next session and trying to build up on that. That really helped me when it came time to really try hard on something that was hard for me.
I like that. Yeah, very very thoughtful kind of mental process there to build that momentum into trying harder, scarier things. When you're out bouldering, you've talked about how that can be a little bit easier with the kids. Is it because it's a shorter day, or are you bringing the family out?
Sometimes both. When I bring the family out, you know, like I just say like, hey, let's go hang in the woods. And that's a little bit chaotic with all the kiddos. Yeah. I don't really consider those like days for me, but it's just fun to get them out and they're psyched and they like to put on their shoes and just like jump around and, you know, do kiddo stuff in the woods, which is great. And yeah, when I do get out with friends or whatnot, it's really nice too, because that can be really efficient, really quick use of my time. You know, Smith has a commute time associated to it. I feel like there's definitely opportunities where I can get out to the boulders more or less in that commute time that it would take to get to Smith and get a really good, you know, get absolutely worked on some hard stuff. And also to your point about climbing above bolts or whatever, trying hard there, I feel like the bouldering is a really good training tool too, to like try hard and like fully commit. And I feel like that does translate well to like a rope climbing where it's like, okay, I see this crux, I see where my next stance is or where I'm going to clip the bolt, right? But I just have to get through this like short boulder problem. And I feel like if you can apply that on a rope, it can really help.
Tell me about the V7 that you did and the style of that.
So there was 2 7s that I did, and those were, again, like totally in my style. So pretty big and like powerful moves and fairly short boulder problems. So they were both more or less like a handful of moves to the top out move was like a big like dead point. And so, yeah, the first one was honestly quite shocking. I just remember trying hard on it, and my buddy Bailey, who sent it first, was just like, it's going to feel limit. So give it like limit energy, right? Effort. And so it was just like something so simple, but at the time, like it really like resonated. And it's like, okay, this is going to be like, I have to like fully give like my full effort here. And that was cool because it was like last go, best go. It was like, okay, the timer for 2 hours was like getting close and I had to get home to like take the kids somewhere. And I was like, okay, this is my last go. And I stuck it on that last go. And that was like super fun. It was like such a good crew and everyone was psyched. And
hell yeah.
It was more or less like steep to like good holds. And then, yeah, really big, powerful move to the top. Again, like kind of similar to breaking through on the ropes. It was something that, like you said, is something in my style, something big moves. Like it definitely helps to break into a grade if it's like suited towards you.
Yeah, way to go. When you look back now, and you've been on this pretty potent program, if you will, where you're not putting a lot of hours in each week, but you're getting quite a bit out of it. Does anything else stand out in terms of the outsized impact of what you're putting into your climbing or how you're climbing on your climbing days?
Rest. Sleep quality is huge.
There's no way you're getting sleep. How are you getting sleep?
Yeah, I know. But it's crazy. It's like when I do get sleep, it's like, wow, somebody turned the gravity off, right? Like,
right. It's a performance enhancing drug. 7 hours of sleep when you've got a 1-year-old is a performance enhancing drug for sure.
Yeah. Turns out sleep and rest is important. Yeah. I'm a big advocate too on hydration. I drink a ton of water, and I feel like oftentimes when I'm tired, if I just drink I'll go and pound a liter of water, I feel like I almost always feel better. I almost always feel like I probably could be better hydrated, and just probably also part of the parent trap of constantly running around. You're always taking care of your family, your kids, but got to take a little bit of time and take care of yourself too. Also too, videoing yourself is really interesting to see if you can, and watching yourself, whether it's like on a board or even outside, right? I always have this mental picture of what I look like, or it's like, oh yeah, I tried really hard on that move, but I just like couldn't latch it. And then I look at the video and it's like, wow, I don't look like I'm trying very hard. It's like, okay, I could probably try harder. And I also think that's really good for beta as well. Like, sometimes it's like in the moment, it's like, oh, was my foot here? Was my foot there? And in terms of like, again, going back to the efficiency, trying to make the most out of your climbing, I feel like that's also really nice because you can look back and quickly try and decipher like exactly what your beta was on that last burn, right? It's like, okay, that worked. My foot being there worked, or my foot being there did not work. Okay, let's change that. Let's go. So I feel like that the video aspect, having that, it can be quite powerful if you try and use it.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up because I think a lot of people video these days, and oftentimes it either just like dies in the phone, in the camera roll, or it's to share. And so we post it on social media or something like that, but it's not for analysis specifically. And I certainly almost, predominantly fall into that trap. Like I take a lot of videos and then maybe I'll post them because it's part of the show or whatever, but I'm not really using that video to try to become a better climber. And only just recently have I started doing that. And I think it's really great for busy climbers, especially if it's going to be a couple of weeks before you get back to that project, or even indoors. I've been videoing my kilter climbs lately, but I do them on different angles. And so like when I go back to 45 degrees, it might have been a couple of weeks since I was on 45 degrees. I can go back and be like, oh yeah, I almost sent this thing and here was my position. And it just accelerates the performance, kind of puts you in a better place to perform at that next session. I didn't have to do 3 goes to relearn those moves. I just kind of rewatched it and was like, oh yeah, that's how I fell into this move and that seemed to work. And this thing over here didn't work. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. I appreciate you sharing that because I do think the videoing can be helpful, especially for busy climbers to kind of relearn moves. What about videos on projects that you're about to get on, whether it's indoors on the boards or when you're getting outside? Are you seeking beta videos, and are there any people as tall as you that you can even reference beta videos on, or is it just it's just a bunch of beta that you'd never use?
Oh, totally. Yeah, like I'll hunt down all and any beta videos, like whether it's the boulders around town or at Smith on like a current project, and I'll like, again, it's just like if I can get any sort of edge to try and use my time more efficiently and try to like understand like what other people's betas are, even if I don't end up using it, right? Like, okay, like, oh, that looks like a tough section there. Like maybe that's the crux, and trying to look at like the hand sequence or the foot sequence. Yeah, I do feel like too, it's like a good skill to refine. I feel like I'm naturally really like a visual person. And I feel like, I think I kind of underestimated that skill for me. Whereas like, my good friend Jason, the beta just like washes away, and it's like he's, I joke around. It's like he's trying to onsite every time he's on a red point burn.
Right.
It's like, he's like he goes to like a different hold or a different sequence, and I think it's definitely something that can really be beneficial. And so yeah, I'm totally trying to find any sort of beta I can on videos beforehand. And yeah, sometimes it's like there's no way I can use their beta, but I think just at least getting a basis for like what the movement looks like, and it is super helpful.
Just a great way to save time. Do you have a sense for how many hours a week you put into your climbing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of my standard week is probably something like 6 hours, like 2 sessions at the gym. Those are probably about 2 hours each. So we're at 4. And then, between a run day, a strength day, then I try to do a short, quick hangboard session every week, once a week. And that's probably about half an hour. So something like, what is that, 5 to 6 hours of like my training time, but obviously not including any outdoor time.
Well, you're just accomplishing a lot because, for some people, 6 hours is a day, is a training day. And then they have 4 of those in a week. So the fact that you're able to pack so much in 6 hours and achieve what you've been able to achieve as busy as you are, it's really impressive. I know we got to get you out of here because you've got a job to get to and then kids to take care of, and it's Tuesday. So I think it's a board day for you this evening with the dad squad. But give me just a brief look at what your goals are for, as we're recording this, we're kind of entering into the fall season. And then, we can look at 2026. Like, what are you psyched on and what are you hoping to achieve in the next year here?
I've got a current project out at Smith that I'm super psyched on. It's another 12. It's a 12B. That one, yeah, it's just awesome movement. Yeah, it's just like every day I get to try those moves. It's just like so rewarding. And like even just getting outside now as a parent, it's just like I just love, it's like I can't have a bad day. It's just like getting outside, it's just like quiet, fresh air, like gorgeous views, like great company. It's just like it's such it's awesome no matter what happens.
Hell yeah.
But I think like that would be my fall. That's my fall goal to get that. And then I think like, yeah, my ultimate goal is just to continue to, chip away at some of these 512s and experience some of these awesome historic routes. My unofficial goal is like 10 512s. We'll see, how long it takes, but I'm just really enjoying the journey and getting a lot of gratification from the process.
Hell yeah, man. Well, congratulations on everything that you've been able to accomplish up to this point. I think it won't be long. I'll check back in on you, and your goal is going to be 10 513s, just the rate at which you're progressing and just enjoying the process. And I will echo that as well. As a parent, as a very busy professional and parent, there's just no such thing as a bad day outside. There's days where you make progress or don't make progress, but they're just all awesome days. So here's to many more good days outside and just for getting after it. And if I can make it back out there, maybe you'll let me join the dad squad for a day. I'd love to get a session in.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you, man. That'd be a lot of fun.
Sick, man. Well, Joey, thanks again. Oh, I hear one of your kiddos is calling you. It sounds like from 2 rooms over. Somebody's awake or hungry.
Exactly. Yeah, well, it's always loud here.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I really enjoyed chatting with you, and good luck with everything you got going on this year. Keep us posted.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, really appreciate you having me. It's fun chatting with you.
All right, y'all. That wraps things up with weekend warrior Joey Churchman. Joey, thanks for joining the show. Appreciate it. Great to get to know you, and good luck with 3 kids under the age of 7, a full-time job, and climbing the hardest stuff you've ever climbed. Love it, man. Super inspiring. I hope you all who are listening are finding ways to get after it, whatever you've got going on in your life. If you're a weekend warrior because of work, school, family, or maybe not. Maybe you're just like out there climbing 5 days a week and dirt bagging it. Send me messages from the promised land if you are. I would love to hear what that life is like as well. But hey, we're all finding our ways to get after it in the gym and outside, or just like in the car, squeezing a little ball on the way to work. Like I'm sitting here in the parking lot of the trampoline park recording this podcast. And yeah, I've got a little grip squeezer here. Maybe I should be good training and podcasting all at the same time. Let's go. New levels of efficiency. So yeah, okay, I guess we can talk about me for a second here. If you want, you could just turn it off if you don't want. That is the power you have as a podcast listener. You can listen or not listen. So if you're still listening, I can tell you a little bit about me. Well, I got a kilter session in this morning. So speaking of getting in potent board sessions with a little bit of time, my kids had music lessons this morning, and I had about an hour. And so my wife took them. She was out of town for the last week or so. And so I was like full dad mode. And so she took them to music. I had a little over an hour, so I got a warm up in, and then I had like a pretty good board session. It wasn't the best. I powered out early, but I'm doing like really, really hard climbs right now. So I did another V7, which felt awesome. It was crazy. When I first got this kilter board, I've got the kilter full ride, it's called. So it's like their kind of home wall, smaller holds, harder. It's like harder than the normal kilter board that you're probably used to at the gym. I've talked about it in the past. So anyway, I've only got half the holds up right now, but it is plenty hard for me, and we'll see what happens if I add the other half of the holds down the way here. But anyway, they're kind of smaller, like pinches and edges and things require a lot of tension, and every once in a while I'll cut feet, but then I got to get those feet back on immediately or I am off that thing. And so anyway, when I got it just a couple months ago, haven't been on it for very long, and V4s and V5s were like very, very hard, and those were kind of my projects. And now I've been able to, the last couple weeks here, put down V7s in a single session, and plenty that I haven't been able to put down as well. But today I managed to put down a V7, and then I kind of epicked on a V5. I did ultimately get it, which felt good, but the V5 felt as hard as the V7. So I'm still kind of learning my style and trying to learn how to move on this board. But I got like a rockin' session in an hour, a little less than an hour, I think. I mean, I did a warm up. The whole thing took me over maybe an hour and 15 minutes, but in terms of like actual hard climbing, I only did 5 problems, and they ranged from V5 to V7. I did try a V8. My coach over at Kilter programmed a V8 for me, and I could not do like a single move. I couldn't get my butt off the ground, and then I couldn't link moves. It was there's a big jump between 7 and 8, at least for me right now. But there was a big jump between 6 and 7 like a month ago. So I'm really happy with how that's going. And I understand Joey's experience as well. Just the potency of board sessions is really high. You can just get a ton of stimulus in a short amount of time, at least if you're training strength and power like I was doing today and have been doing on the Kilter board for the bouldering goal that I have. And so that was awesome. And now I'm going to rest for a couple of days, or maybe even 3 days, probably just rest, and then get out to the red for a few days. As I mentioned at the top of this episode, I've rented a cabin. Once a year, I do a little staycation with some of my friends, and we rent a cabin at the red. And so we'll get a few days in outside, and I'm going to start to zero in on what will be my main fall goal now that I put down Maisie May, which was the 12D I did recently. There's a route called Wild Gift, which is a 12C, and I got on it a couple times last spring and really like it. It's pretty short and punchy, which works for me right now. I don't have a ton of endurance yet, but it is very power endurance-y. So we'll see how I feel when I get back on that, but I'll try to put a day in on that and then just pop around to where my other friends want to go and have some fun, get some mileage. We got good temps in Kentucky. And so, yeah, that's the plan. I'll do an update after I'm back, or if you're a Patreon supporter, you can get live updates. We've got like a group chat going on there, and I'll drop some videos into the Patreon thing. There's also a free tier for Patreon, by the way. Oh, this is a good segue for me to talk about like how you can help me keep this podcast going. The number one way is Patreon. So if you got it in you, if you got $5 or $7 a month, if you feel like you're getting value out of this podcast, you don't have to stick around forever. You can kind of start and stop, get access to all the bonus content. There's over 100 hours of bonus episodes and pro clinics with everyone from Adam Andra and Alex Honnold and Chris Sharma and Hazel Finley and Nina Williams and Lynn Hill and just like the biggest names in climbing. It's amazing. To pro clinics about how to build endurance, how to build finger strength, how to build power, top 10 bouldering mistakes. So much good stuff in there. I really do feel that there's a ton of value in there. So for like a few bucks or whatever, a handful of bucks a month, if you feel like it's worth it to buy me a beer or buy me a coffee, you can do that over on Patreon. That's like the most direct way you can support me if you're enjoying the struggle. So I really appreciate that. And I've got a goal to try to get 20 more Patreon subscribers by the end of the year here. So if you think you could be one of them, that would be amazing. And then the other way you could help me that's also very direct and has zero cost to it is to leave a nice rating or review over on Apple and Spotify. So if you haven't done that yet, it only takes like a couple minutes. I'd really appreciate it. Just like wherever you're listening, give me a nice review, and those pop up and kind of refresh on the feed, and it helps other people to find the show. And then the last way you can support the show is by supporting the brands that support the struggle. So today's sponsors, PhysiVantage, Petzl, Rungny, and Scarpa. Those codes and links and all that are in your show notes there. So you can get some deals on all of their stuff. And if you let them know that, like, you know, by using the code and all that, it lets them know that you heard about whatever they're selling on my show, then hopefully they will re-up and continue to be sponsors next year, which would be really cool. And again, it takes a lot of work and a lot of time and actually quite a bit of money too to make this show, because I've got people that I pay to help me out with things. Oh, and that's another great segue. I'd like to shout out the people who help me do things, and that would be Glenn, who helps me to edit these podcasts, and also Haley, who helps to do social media and graphic design and all that stuff. Thank you guys for your help. I really appreciate it. And thank you for listening. I appreciate you for your support, for listening, and I really hope you're having an awesome season and you're getting after it indoors or out, and I will see you next week for another one of these episodes.